The classroom hummed with the chatter of children, pencils scratching against paper, and chairs scraping against the floor. Yet, in the very back corner, there was one seat where silence seemed to rest like a delicate feather. This was where Emma sat, her small frame folded neatly into the wooden chair, her hands clutching a pencil not for writing, but for comfort. She longed to join in, to laugh as freely as the others did, but her voice seemed trapped inside her, hidden behind an invisible wall only she could feel. Emma was not invisible, though she often wished she could be. Her teachers knew she was bright, her parents knew she was kind, but the children only saw her silence. They called her the quiet one, never cruel, but never welcoming either. Her world was filled with watching rather than speaking, learning rather than sharing. Every word she wished to say echoed only in her heart, unspoken and unheard, as though her voice was a butterfly too fragile to leave its cocoon. The room seemed louder to Emma than to anyone else. Every whisper, every giggle, every shout of joy was magnified in her ears. She wanted to be part of it, but whenever she thought of speaking, her chest tightened and her cheeks grew warm. Words formed on her tongue, but refused to leave. She listened instead, quietly weaving stories in her mind, painting conversations she wished she could have. Miss Harper, the teacher, often noticed Emma's quiet corner. She knew the girl's mind was sharp, her written work always neat and thoughtful. But when questions were asked aloud, Emma's lips would part only slightly, then close again like a flower at dusk. Miss Harper never pressed too hard. Instead, she smiled, offering warmth in her gaze whenever Emma dared to look up. Sometimes, that smile was enough to make Emma's heart flutter with a hope she could not explain. When words failed Emma, books spoke for her. She carried them everywhere, their covers worn from her fingers. She loved stories where heroes found bravery, where quiet characters grew into something more. Books became her friends, her voice, her safe place. Between pages, she wasn't the shy girl in the corner. She was the adventurer, the explorer, the one who could speak and sing without fear. At home, Emma's voice was different. She laughed with her parents, sang softly to herself in her room, and even told little stories to her cat, Whiskers. Her parents often wondered why their lively, clever girl became so silent at school. Emma didn't know how to explain it. At home, the world felt safe, and her voice felt free. Outside, fear built walls around her throat. Deep in her heart, Emma dreamed of standing on a stage, reading her stories aloud. She imagined the sound of her voice filling a room, imagined applause ringing in her ears. But the dream felt far away, like a star she could see but never touch. Each time she thought of stepping forward, fear pulled her back. Yet the dream stayed alive, glowing softly, waiting. One morning, as Emma sat quietly, her teacher asked the class to share their favorite story. Emma's chest tightened. She had so many stories she loved, but her voice resisted. She almost stayed silent. But then, she remembered the way she told her cat stories, the way her parents laughed at her little jokes. For a moment, courage flickered. Later that day, Emma dropped her pencil. Before she could reach for it, another hand picked it up and placed it on her desk. It was Lily, a cheerful girl with a bright red ribbon in her hair. She smiled kindly. "Here you go," she said. Emma whispered, "Thank you," barely audible. But inside, her heart leapt. She had spoken, even if softly. For the first time, Emma returned a smile. It was small, timid, but real. Lily's smile grew wider in return, as if Emma's quiet gesture had unlocked a new secret friendship. The moment was simple, but for Emma, it was monumental. It was the first time in school her silence broke. Not with words, but with warmth. Yet as quickly as courage came, doubt followed. What if Lily thought she was strange for being so quiet? What if the other kids laughed? Emma's thoughts clouded her heart like gray mist. Still, she held on to the memory of that smile, replaying it in her mind like a candle in the dark. Emma began writing more often in her notebook, filling it with little poems, secret stories, and words she wished she could say aloud. It became her treasure, hidden safely beneath her pillow each night. Her notebook was her secret voice, inked in careful letters, waiting for a day it might finally be heard. When she closed her eyes, Emma's imagination soared. She pictured herself in faraway lands, sailing seas, meeting heroes, and speaking confidently to friends who admired her. In her mind, she was never shy. In her world of dreams, she had already found her voice. Though her voice had not yet reached the world, Emma felt it inside her, waiting. Sometimes, when no one was listening, she whispered lines from her notebook, practicing, hoping. The words trembled, but they were hers. Courage was growing quietly beneath the surface. Emma didn't yet know how her journey would unfold, but something had begun. A pencil returned, a smile shared, a whisper spoken. All small things, but to her, they were seeds of change. Tomorrow was still uncertain, but for the first time, she looked toward it with a spark of hope. The schoolyard was always alive with laughter. Children raced across the playground, their shoes thudding against the pavement, their voices ringing out in songs and cheers. Emma stood near the fence, watching with her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She longed to run with them, to join the games, but her feet felt heavy with hesitation. Her voice seemed to vanish the moment she thought of calling out. Instead, she smiled quietly to herself, pretending she was part of their joy, even from afar. A group of girls gathered with a long rope, singing in rhythm as they skipped. Their voices chimed like bells, their laughter filling the air. Emma's eyes sparkled at the sight. She loved the song, knew the rhythm by heart, but her feet remained still. She imagined herself leaping between the swinging rope, her braids bouncing, her laughter blending with theirs. In her mind, she belonged. In reality, she watched from outside the circle, her heart pressed against invisible glass. Lily, the cheerful girl with the red ribbon, called out to others, "Come join us." Emma's heart leapt. Maybe this was her chance. But the invitation skipped over her, reaching another classmate instead. Emma's shoulders slumped as she pretended to adjust her satchel. The moment passed, and with it, the courage she had been gathering all morning. She whispered to herself, maybe next time, though deep down, she wasn't sure she believed it. When the games became too much to watch, Emma drifted toward a wooden bench near the playground's edge. She sat quietly, tracing patterns with her shoes in the dirt. The bench creaked softly under her weight, and though it was just wooden nails, it felt like her safe place. From here, she could see everything without anyone seeing her too much. It was her tiny island in a sea of laughter. As Emma sat quietly, Lily approached. She tilted her head with a curious smile. "Why don't you come play?" she asked, her voice gentle. Emma's breath caught. Someone had noticed her, someone had asked. She wanted to say yes, but her tongue felt heavy, her voice hiding again. She only managed a small shake of her head, her cheeks burning. Lily didn't frown. She only sat beside her, swinging her legs casually as though silence was no barrier at all. Emma opened her mouth, trying to form a word, any word. She whispered, but the rest crumbled before it could escape. Her chest tightened, her throat closed, and she stared down at her shoes in defeat. Lily tilted her head, waiting patiently, but Emma only bit her lip. The silence felt heavy, like a mischance. Yet Lily didn't tease. She only hummed softly, as though to say, "It's okay. You don't have to speak yet." At lunchtime, Emma sat alone under the shade of the oak tree, unwrapping her sandwich carefully. She always ate quietly, unnoticed. But today, Lily appeared again. Without asking, she sat down and split her sandwich in half. "Want to try mine? It's peanut butter and honey," she said. Emma hesitated, then nodded softly, taking the piece. She didn't speak, but when she tasted the sweetness, her eyes lit up. It was the first meal she hadn't eaten alone in a long time. As they ate, Lily began chatting about the rope game, about her favorite book, about her dog. Emma listened, nodding quietly, her small smile growing with each word. For the first time, she felt a little less invisible. She wasn't speaking, not yet, but her presence mattered. She was part of something, even if it was just a quiet lunch beneath an old tree. The days passed, and Lily kept finding Emma. Sometimes she would wave from across the yard. Sometimes she would just sit beside her without asking. Emma grew used to her presence, her warmth like sunlight breaking through clouds. She wasn't sure why Lily chose her, but a seed of gratitude began to bloom inside her. Still, Emma feared what might happen if she spoke. What if her words came out wrong? What if Lily laughed, or worse, walked away? The fear clung to her like a shadow, holding her voice hostage. Yet, every day, Lily's kindness chipped away at that fear, even if only a little. Emma began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, it was worth the risk. One afternoon, as Lily handed Emma a forgotten pencil again, Emma whispered, "Thank you." The words were soft, fragile, but they were hers. Lily grinned widely, as if she had just been given the greatest gift. Emma's cheeks turned pink, but for the first time, she felt proud. She had spoken, and someone had heard. The next day, Lily tugged Emma gently toward the jump rope circle. "Just try," she urged with a playful grin. Emma shook her head at first, but then, slowly, she stepped closer. She didn't jump, not yet, but she stood near the rope, watching as if preparing for her turn. It was a small step, but her heart pounded with the thrill of being closer than ever before. When Emma finally dared to step inside the rope, her timing was off. She tripped, stumbling onto the ground. For a moment, the world froze. Would they laugh? But instead, Lily reached down with a hand and a smile. "That was great for your first try," she said. Emma blinked, then slowly reached up, letting Lily pull her back to her feet. The warmth of Lily's hand in hers lingered even after the game ended. Emma felt something new inside her, courage. It wasn't big yet, but it glowed like a spark waiting to grow. For the first time, she realized mistakes didn't mean rejection. Sometimes they meant friendship. That evening, Emma hugged her notebook close. For so long, she had lived behind a closed door of silence. But now, with Lily's kindness, that door had opened just a crack. It was enough for light to slip through. Enough to show her that maybe, one day, her voice could find its way into the world. Emma's desk was by the window, where sunlight spilled in like liquid gold. She loved the way the light danced across her notebook, making the pages glow. From here, she could watch the sky when lessons felt overwhelming, and the trees, swaying in the breeze, became her silent companions. But as much as she loved the window, it also reminded her how far her voice stayed from the center of the classroom. While other children raised their hands eagerly, Emma traced the edges of her paper, letting the sunshine be her quiet friend. Miss Harper's voice carried across the room, gentle yet commanding. "Who can tell me what courage means?" Hands shot up, waving like little flags of confidence. Emma's heart fluttered. She knew the answer. She wanted to share it. She even opened her mouth. But the words caught in her throat, trembling like butterflies refusing to take flight. Instead, she lowered her eyes, letting the question pass her by. As another student shouted the definition, Emma whispered the same words under her breath. Her answer was correct, yet it dissolved into the air unheard. She felt a flicker of pride that she knew the answer, but also a sting of regret that no one would ever know it came from her too. She traced the word courage in her notebook, as though reminding herself that one day she would live it. Two girls at the back whispered and giggled, not about Emma directly, but the sound still curled around her heart like a cold vine. Every laugh that wasn't hers felt like a reminder that she wasn't part of their circle. She bent lower over her notebook, making herself smaller, trying to disappear. Yet, inside, she wished she could laugh loudly too, without fear of being seen. Miss Harper turned to the chalkboard, writing bold white letters that filled the room with their authority. The scratch of chalk was steady, reassuring. Emma focused on the sound, letting it drown out her doubts. Every line of chalk felt like a heartbeat of the lesson, and for a moment, she felt calm. Learning was a world she could enter silently, where answers didn't need a voice, only understanding. Later, Miss Harper announced a group activity. "Pair up, everyone." The classroom erupted in chatter and movement. Emma's heart froze. Pairing up was always hardest for her. She waited, hoping someone might choose her. Lily turned and smiled warmly, waving her hand. "Come with me," she said. Relief washed over Emma like cool water. Sitting beside Lily, Emma felt her nerves soften. Lily didn't ask why Emma was quiet. She simply shared her notes, humming as she worked. Emma copied carefully, feeling safe. Even silence felt lighter when shared with someone who accepted it. The partnership wasn't loud or flashy, but it gave Emma a tiny anchor in the stormy sea of group activities. Miss Harper walked around the classroom, observing. She paused near Emma and asked gently, "Emma, would you like to share what you and Lily have written?" Emma's breath caught. The whole room seemed to hush, waiting. Lily gave her an encouraging nod. Emma wanted to say yes. She wanted to let her words out. But once again, fear held her voice hostage. She lowered her eyes and shook her head softly. Though Emma didn't speak, her notebook was filled with thoughtful notes. Miss Harper glanced at them and smiled. "Very good work," she said aloud, her voice kind. The class turned their attention back to their tasks. Emma's cheeks warmed, not from embarrassment, but from pride. Even in silence, she had been seen. For the first time, Emma didn't feel invisible. She tucked the moment carefully inside her heart, like a precious gem. Maybe she wasn't ready to speak in front of everyone, but she had been noticed. And that meant her voice, when it finally came, would matter. As the lesson continued, the classroom buzzed with chatter and questions. To Emma, it felt like an echo chamber where voices bounced and multiplied. She listened carefully, catching details others missed. Though she didn't add to the noise, she felt like a quiet observer in a symphony of sound. During break, Lily leaned close and whispered, "You did great, even if you didn't speak." Emma blinked in surprise. Her heart felt lighter. "Thank you," she whispered back, the words tiny but real. It was one of the first times she had willingly spoken aloud to a classmate. Emma realized that confidence wasn't a sudden burst of bravery. It was a seed planted in small, quiet moments. Every whispered word, every smile, every nod of encouragement from Lily was watering that seed. Someday it would bloom. She clutched her pencil tighter, determined to keep trying. The end-of-day bell rang, filling the air with cheerful chatter as children packed their bags. Emma lingered, not rushing. She traced her hand across the word courage, still written on the chalkboard, as though taking a piece of it with her. The letters smudged slightly under her fingertips, yet their meaning stayed clear in her heart. Emma stepped out of the school, her satchel swinging at her side. The day hadn't been perfect, but it had been different. She had whispered, she had been noticed, and she had felt proud. The path home glowed with the promise of tomorrow. For the first time, Emma believed that her voice would one day rise strong. The library was Emma's favorite place, though she rarely told anyone. When she pushed the heavy wooden doors open, the smell of books wrapped around her like a comforting blanket. The shelves stretched high, filled with stories waiting to be discovered. For Emma, the library wasn't just a room. It was a secret world where silence was not weakness but strength. Here she belonged. Emma ran her fingers along the spines of the books. Dragons, explorers, brave heroines, wise kings, all lined neatly in rows, inviting her into their worlds. She imagined each spine as a door, ready to swing open into adventure. Her heart raced at the thought that even if her own voice was small, inside these pages, voices roared like thunder and sang like birds. When Emma pulled a book from the shelf and opened it, the pages seemed to whisper just for her. The sound of turning paper was like music, steady and calming. She sank into a chair by the window, where light kissed the page. As she read, the characters leapt from the paper into her imagination, and for the first time, Emma felt her silence was filled with countless voices. Mrs. Willow, the librarian, moved quietly among the aisles, her shawl trailing softly behind her. She noticed Emma often but never disturbed her. Instead, she would occasionally place a book on the desk with a knowing smile, as though she understood exactly what Emma needed to read. Emma admired her. It was as if Mrs. Willow spoke through books rather than words. One afternoon, Mrs. Willow placed a worn book titled Voices on the table where Emma sat. Its cover was faded, but the golden letters gleamed as though alive. Emma's heart leapt. She opened it slowly, discovering poems and short stories about people who found strength in speaking, even when afraid. Every page felt like a mirror of her own quiet soul. One tale inside the book told of a knight who was so shy, he couldn't call out in battle. Yet, when his friends were in danger, he found his voice and saved them all. Emma's chest tightened as she read. If a knight could find his courage, perhaps she could too. The story wrapped around her like a gentle promise. That night, Emma dreamt of standing on a stage, her voice ringing clear and strong. The books she had read seemed to stand behind her like an army of support, whispering encouragement. She awoke with her heart pounding, not in fear this time, but in longing. She wanted that dream to come true. Emma began writing little notes in her notebook after library visits. Not just schoolwork, but her own words, thoughts, poems, and dreams she was too shy to say aloud. The notebook became her hidden voice, one she could trust. It was her first step toward sharing herself with the world. One day, Mrs. Willow found Emma's forgotten notebook on the table. She didn't pry, but left a little sticky note on it. "Your words matter." Emma's heart nearly burst when she found it. To be seen without being judged was the most beautiful gift she had ever received. Inspired, Emma began reading aloud softly in the quiet corner of the library. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but each word she spoke aloud made her braver. The books listened patiently, their pages rustling like applause. Though no one else heard her, Emma felt like she was practicing for something greater. Emma pretended that the narrow aisle between bookshelves was her stage. She stood there, reading from her notebook as though an invisible audience cheered her on. Her small voice echoed faintly in the quiet library, and she smiled. It was the sound of practice of becoming. After finishing a paragraph, Emma closed her eyes and imagined the sound of applause filling the air. The silence of the library transformed into roaring approval in her mind. It wasn't real, yet felt real enough to make her smile widely. For Emma, imagination became her rehearsal for confidence. The books Emma read felt like friends lending her their courage. Each story of bravery, each character who faced fears, became part of her. She carried them in her heart, piecing together her own strength one story at a time. She began to believe that maybe her voice could be brave too. As the sun dipped lower, the library filled with amber light. Emma closed her book reluctantly, knowing it was time to go. Yet she felt different walking out, lighter, taller, almost as though her silent practice had given her new wings. The library had given her more than stories. It had given her hope. As Emma walked home, she whispered parts of the story she had read aloud, her voice steadier than before. The library stayed with her, not in walls and shelves, but in courage tucked within her heart. She didn't just borrow books anymore. She had borrowed bravery. The morning began with Miss Harper standing at the front of the classroom, her voice carrying excitement. "Children, our school will hold its annual storytelling event next month," she declared. The words sparked a wave of chatter. For Emma, however, the room seemed to shrink. Storytelling? On a stage? In front of everyone? Her heart sank. She had just begun whispering in class, and now the thought of speaking before the whole school loomed like a giant shadow. As excitement rippled across her classmates, Emma felt herself sinking deeper into her seat. The words storytelling repeated in her mind like an echo chamber. She imagined standing on stage, her mouth refusing to open, while the audience laughed. Her palms grew clammy just at the thought. The ripple of joy outside of her seemed like waves crashing against her fragile silence inside. Miss Harper clapped her hands for attention. Each student will pair up with a partner to practice. The classroom erupted again, children rushing to sit with their friends. Emma's stomach twisted. Who would want her? Just as panic rose, Lily appeared at her side, red ribbon bouncing. "Partners?" she asked with a grin. Relief washed over Emma, though fear lingered like a shadow behind the light. Lily insisted they try immediately. "Come on, Emma, just one sentence," she encouraged. Emma opened her mouth, but the words stuck, heavy like stones. She stammered, cheeks burning, then lowered her head. "I can't," she whispered. Lily shook her head gently. "Not yet, but you will." That single word, "yet," sparked a fragile hope. That night, Emma lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Her mind played cruel tricks, showing her standing frozen on stage while laughter echoed. She buried her face into her pillow, wishing she could disappear. Yet, alongside the fear, a spark of determination flickered. Could she learn to speak before then? Could she overcome this mountain? The next day, Lily arrived with a plan. "We'll practice one word at a time," she said cheerfully. Emma blinked. "One word." Lily nodded. "Every big story is made of small words. We'll build it together." Emma hesitated, then agreed. For the first time, the mountain didn't look impossible. It looked like many small steps. Their first word was hello. Simple, ordinary, but monumental for Emma. She whispered it barely audible. Lily clapped as if Emma had recited a whole poem. The encouragement made Emma smile for the first time during practice. That smile mattered. It was the seed of confidence. Each day, the words grew. "Good morning, my name is Emma. I like stories." With every success, Emma's shoulders straightened just a little more. The words no longer felt like stones. They were stepping stones, building a path toward the stage. But progress wasn't steady. One afternoon, Emma froze again, unable to say her line. Panic rose, and she felt herself slipping back into silence. Tears welled in her eyes. "See, I can't do this," she whispered. Lily shook her head firmly. "You can. You already did. This is just one stumble." Miss Harper noticed their struggle and joined in. "Emma," she said softly, "every voice trembles before it steadies. Courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about speaking despite the fear." Emma looked up, her teacher's words echoing in her heart. Miss Harper suggested they practice in the library, where it was quiet but still public. The idea terrified Emma, but she agreed. Each afternoon, she and Lily read aloud softly among the tall shelves. The library became a place where her voice echoed just a little stronger each day. Day after day, Emma's whispers grew louder. At first, only Lily could hear. Then Miss Harper, passing by, heard. Eventually, a few curious classmates noticed and gathered quietly. Emma didn't run. She kept reading, her voice trembling but clear. It was a miracle in motion. But the closer the event came, the stronger Emma's doubts grew. At night, she imagined tripping over her words. "What if I fail in front of everyone?" she asked Lily. Lily took her hand. "Then you stand up and try again. Failure is not the end. It's the step before success." Miss Harper gave Emma one last exercise, speaking in front of a mirror. At first, Emma couldn't meet her own gaze. But slowly, she straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin, and spoke. Her reflection didn't mock her. It encouraged her. For the first time, she saw not a shy girl, but a storyteller in waiting. The night before the event, Emma sat at her desk, her secret notebook open. She read her story one more time, whispering the words into the night. Fear still lingered, but now so did strength. "I will try," she whispered. And that whisper carried more power than silence ever had. One crisp morning, the school buzzed with whispers. A guest speaker had arrived, a storyteller known for visiting schools. Emma clutched her books tighter, unsure whether to feel excited or terrified. When the tall woman stepped into the hall, her presence filled the space like sunlight. She introduced herself as Mrs. Rosewood, a voice coach who had once been shy too. Emma's heart skipped. Could this woman understand her fears? Mrs. Rosewood began with a tale, her voice rising and falling like music. Every word seemed alive, painting pictures in the air. The children gasped and clapped, enchanted. Emma sat frozen, amazed. It wasn't just storytelling, it was magic. If a voice could do that, maybe hers could too. As the applause faded, Mrs. Rosewood's eyes swept the hall. They lingered on Emma, as though she could see the silent struggle hiding there. Emma quickly lowered her gaze, but a spark of connection lingered. She felt seen, truly seen for the first time. After the session, Mrs. Rosewood approached Emma. "You have a quiet strength," she said softly. "Would you join me for a little practice after school?" Emma's heart raced. Fear urged her to say no. But something deeper, a flicker of bravery, pushed her to whisper yes. That afternoon, Emma followed Mrs. Rosewood into an empty classroom. The chairs were stacked, sunlight filtered through the blinds, and the quiet felt heavy with possibility. "The stage isn't as scary as it seems," Mrs. Rosewood said. "It's just a space where your story waits to be heard." Emma swallowed hard and nodded. Mrs. Rosewood began with something simple, breathing. "Your voice lives in your breath," she explained. She showed Emma how to inhale deeply, then let the sound flow out like a river. Emma tried, shaky at first, but slowly found a rhythm. For the first time, speaking felt like something natural, not forced. "Say your name," Mrs. Rosewood instructed. Emma hesitated, then whispered, "Emma." "Louder," the mentor encouraged gently. Emma tried again, "Emma," and the sound carried. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. Her lips trembled into a shy smile. Mrs. Rosewood noticed Emma's notebook clutched tightly in her arms. "What's inside?" she asked kindly. Emma hesitated, then opened it. Pages filled with stories, dreams, fears, worlds she had imagined. Mrs. Rosewood's eyes shone. "Your voice is already alive. We just need to let the world hear it." Mrs. Rosewood explained that stories are not about perfection. They are about connection. When you speak, imagine giving a gift to your listener, she said. Emma pictured handing her words to Lily, to Miss Harper, even to the whole class. Suddenly, speaking felt less like a burden and more like sharing. At last, Mrs. Rosewood asked Emma to read a short paragraph from her notebook. Emma's hands trembled, but her voice, though soft, flowed steadily. When she finished, Mrs. Rosewood applauded. "Beautiful! Your voice is like a gentle stream. It doesn't need to roar to be heard." Before leaving, Mrs. Rosewood placed a hand over Emma's notebook. "Promise me you'll keep speaking, little by little. The world needs your stories." Emma nodded, her chest full of warmth. It was the first time she truly believed her voice mattered. That evening, Emma found Lily waiting by the gate. She told her everything, her voice soft but steady. Lily squealed with joy. "I knew it. You're amazing, Emma." For the first time, Emma didn't shake her head or deny it. She simply smiled. From then on, practice wasn't just work, it was joy. Emma whispered stories to the wind, read aloud to her mirror, and even hummed her words like songs. The fear hadn't vanished, but it no longer ruled her. Courage was growing stronger than silence. After a week, Mrs. Rosewood left, but not before giving Emma a final reminder. The stage may scare you, but remember, it's just another room. And every room deserves your voice. Emma held on to those words like a lantern. Emma walked home that day feeling lighter. Fear still lived inside her, but it was no longer a cage. It was a mountain she was learning to climb. And at the top of that mountain was her voice, waiting to be free. The days after Mrs. Rosewood's departure felt different. The classroom buzzed with chatter about the upcoming storytelling event. Children boasted of their stories, practicing loudly. Emma sat quietly, notebook in hand. For once, though, she wasn't shrinking from the noise. She was listening, preparing, waiting. A spark of secret excitement flickered in her chest. Lily leaned over Emma's desk. "You've been writing so much lately. What's in there?" Emma hesitated, then whispered, "A story." Lily's eyes widened. "Can I hear it?" Emma shook her head shyly. It wasn't ready, not yet. But the truth was, Emma wanted to share it when the time was right. Emma began reading parts of her story aloud in the library when no one else was around. Her voice trembled, but the words carried something new, imagination that painted pictures even in the silence. The library, once her refuge of quiet, became the place where her hidden gifts stirred awake. One afternoon, Emma didn't notice a group of classmates peeking from the aisle. Her voice, still soft, carried a strength that made them pause. When she finished, they clapped lightly. Emma spun around, startled. Instead of laughter, she saw admiration in their eyes. Her cheeks flushed, but for the first time from pride. Miss Harper soon heard whispers of Emma's reading. She approached quietly one afternoon and listened unseen. Emma's words carried grace and vivid imagery far beyond her years. Miss Harper's eyes welled with pride. She's not just learning to speak, she thought. She's a storyteller. Lily finally convinced Emma to share a part of her story with her. Emma read slowly, her voice trembling. But as the words unfolded, Lily's eyes widened in awe. "Emma, this is amazing. You don't just tell stories. You make people see them." Emma smiled shyly, realizing her friend truly believed in her gift. With each reading, Emma's voice grew steadier. What began as whispers became sentences, then paragraphs. Her voice was like a stream gaining strength, quiet but flowing with grace. She realized it wasn't just about being loud. It was about being clear, sincere, and true. One day, Miss Harper gathered the class. "We will each share a small piece of our story." Panic rose in Emma, but when it was her turn, she remembered Mrs. Rosewood's words. She opened her notebook and began. The classroom hushed. Her voice painted worlds so vividly that everyone leaned closer, enchanted. When Emma finished, silence hung for a breath, and then the classroom erupted in applause. Not mocking, not pitying, but genuine appreciation. Emma's cheeks flushed again, but this time she didn't shrink. She bowed her head slightly and smiled. For the first time, applause felt like sunlight, warm and welcoming. Emma realized something powerful. She was no longer just the shy girl. She was a storyteller. Her voice carried pictures, emotions, and dreams. And when she shared it, people listened, not out of kindness, but out of genuine wonder. The shy girl was slowly transforming into something new. That night, Emma flipped through her notebook, amazed. Every page held more than words. They held her heart. She realized her gift wasn't only in speaking. It was in creating worlds where others could belong. Her notebook was her treasure chest, and her voice the key to unlocking it. Soon, Emma was asked to read during assembly. Her knees shook, but when she began, her story flowed like sunlight. Teachers, students, even the principal leaned in, captivated. The quiet girl had found her way to be heard, and the school saw her in a new light. Emma noticed something even more magical than the applause. Her stories made people feel. Some smiled, some sighed, some even wiped their eyes. She wasn't just telling stories, she was connecting hearts. And that connection felt like the truest gift her voice could give. One afternoon, Miss Harper gave Emma a letter. It was from Mrs. Rosewood. Dear Emma, it read, "Your voice is your gift. Never forget, a quiet voice can change the world." Emma pressed the letter to her chest, tears sparkling in her eyes. As Emma walked home that evening, her notebook hugged to her chest, she felt a new kind of courage. Fear still whispered in her ear, but it no longer held the pen. Her voice, her stories, her hidden talent, they were hers to share. And she was ready for the next stage. The principal gathered the school. Next week, we'll hold our annual storytelling showcase. Each class will present their best. Excited chatter erupted. For Emma's class, the choice was clear. Emma would represent them. At first, her heart pounded in fear. A whole auditorium? But then, a flicker of pride whispered, "They chose me." That evening, Emma's thoughts swirled. She had spoken in the library, in class, even in assembly. But a stage? With spotlights, hundreds of eyes, and silence that demanded her voice? Fear crept back, whispering, "What if you fail?" She gripped her notebook tighter. Confidence was a seed, but could it withstand the storm? Lily visited Emma the next day. "Emma, you can do this. I've heard your stories. They're magic. The stage isn't scary. It's just more friends to share with." Emma smiled, comforted by her friend's unwavering faith. Sometimes courage didn't start within. It was borrowed from those who believed in you. Emma stood in front of her mirror, notebook in hand. She read aloud, her voice trembling. Each repetition steadied her more. The girl who once whispered now stood taller, her reflection glowing brighter with each practice. She realized the stage was just another mirror, one that showed courage to the world. Miss Harper called Emma aside. "When you stand on that stage, don't think of the crowd. Think of your story. Let it guide you. When your heart speaks, the world listens." Emma nodded, feeling the wisdom settle inside her like a lantern lit against the dark. The first rehearsal was intimidating. The auditorium stretched endlessly, seats empty but heavy with imagined eyes. Emma stepped onto the stage. Her heart raced. She opened her notebook and began softly. The sound echoed back to her, larger than she expected. Slowly, she grew louder, filling the empty hall with her story. Each rehearsal built her courage. The echoes no longer frightened her. They became her allies, carrying her words farther than she thought possible. Emma realized her voice didn't vanish in the air. It expanded, multiplied, and lived in others. The stage was not a void, but a bridge. On the eve of the showcase, Emma lay awake. Her notebook rested beside her, glowing softly in the moonlight. She whispered her story one last time into the darkness. It wasn't fear that kept her awake. It was anticipation, the trembling before dawn. The morning arrived. Families filled the auditorium, chatter echoing through the space. Students fidgeted nervously backstage, adjusting costumes and clutching scripts. Emma stood silently, notebook pressed to her chest. Her hands trembled, but her eyes held a spark. The shy girl of yesterday was stepping into today's light. The announcer called Emma's name. Her knees shook, but she stepped forward. The curtain parted, and the stage stretched wide before her. A spotlight bathed her in gold. For a heartbeat, silence roared louder than applause. Then Emma opened her notebook, took a deep breath, and began. As Emma spoke, her words rose higher, steadier, more vibrant. The story poured from her like a river of light. The audience leaned forward, entranced. She was no longer the shy girl with trembling hands. She was a storyteller, commanding the stage with gentle power. Emma glimpsed the audience, teachers, classmates, parents. She even spotted Miss Harper and Lily, both smiling proudly. Their presence steadied her heart. Confidence wasn't the absence of fear. It was the courage to stand tall despite it. And Emma was standing taller than ever before. Emma reached the climax of her story, her voice ringing with emotion. The hall seemed to fade, leaving only her voice and her story alive in the golden air. She realized then, the stage wasn't frightening, it was freeing. It gave her the wings her words had always deserved. Emma reached the climax of her story, her voice ringing with emotion. The hall seemed to fade, leaving only her voice and her story alive in the golden air. She realized then, the stage wasn't frightening, it was freeing. It gave her the wings her words had always deserved. Her final words hung in the silence, shimmering like starlight. For a moment, no one breathed. Then, thunderous applause filled the hall. Emma's heart swelled. She bowed shyly, smiling through tears. The applause wasn't just for her bravery. It was for her gift, her voice, her story. When she left the stage, Emma knew something had changed forever. She no longer feared the spotlight. Instead, she saw it as a friend, a place where her voice could shine. She whispered to her notebook, "The stage will always await me." And this time, she was ready to return. After the showcase, whispers about Emma spread through the school halls. No longer was she the shy girl. Now, she was the storyteller. Children greeted her with bright smiles, some even asking, "When will you tell another story?" Emma felt shy at first, but the warmth of their curiosity sparked joy in her heart. One day, a group of younger students approached her timidly. "Will you read to us?" they asked. Their eager eyes reminded Emma of herself, small, uncertain, wishing for courage. She agreed, and soon, a corner of the playground became her first open-air stage. As Emma read, laughter rang out. The little ones clapped, giggled, and leaned closer. Her words painted pictures that even the youngest understood. Emma realized stories weren't just for showcasing. They were gifts, capable of lifting spirits and planting seeds of courage. Lily watched from a distance, her chest swelling with pride. "She's inspiring them," she whispered. Once, Emma had borrowed courage from her. Now, Emma's courage was spilling outward, touching everyone around her. Lily realized that friendship wasn't just about giving. It was about receiving inspiration, too. The principal invited Emma to read during Friday's assembly. She trembled at the thought of standing before the whole school again. But then she remembered the children's eager eyes in the playground. This wasn't about fear, it was about giving. And giving her voice was worth it. On Friday, the hall filled with students and teachers. Emma's heart raced as she stepped up to the podium. Then she began. Her voice flowed like sunlight, weaving a story that made the whole school lean in. By the end, the hall rang with applause, brighter and louder than ever before. Afterward, several teachers approached Emma. "You have a gift," they said. "Your words don't just entertain. They teach, they comfort." Emma realized her voice was more than talent. It was a tool to change how people felt and thought. And she held that tool in her hands. Some shy children began gathering near Emma during recess. "I'm scared to talk in class," one admitted. Emma smiled gently. "I used to feel that way too." She shared her story of finding courage, and their eyes lit with hope. Emma realized her journey was becoming a map for others. Soon, Emma began encouraging others to tell their stories. At recess, a circle formed where each child could share, no matter how short or small. Emma listened intently, clapping the loudest for each one. She learned that inspiring wasn't only about speaking, it was also about listening. Word of Emma's gift reached home. Parents whispered about the girl with the golden stories. Some even visited assemblies just to hear her read. Emma, who once felt invisible, now felt seen in the best possible way. Not for being loud, but for being true. One afternoon, Emma saw a boy crying alone. She sat beside him and softly told a story of a bird learning to fly despite fear. By the end, the boy sniffled, smiled, and whispered, "Thank you." Emma realized stories could heal hearts as gently as they inspired minds. Miss Harper asked Emma to help lead a storytelling workshop for younger students. At first, Emma blinked in shock. Her? Leading? But then she thought of the circle she had already started. With her notebook glowing in her hands, she nodded. "Yes, I'd love to." The workshop was lively. Children laughed, scribbled, and shared little stories. Emma guided gently, encouraging each one. She wasn't just inspiring now. She was teaching others to find their own voices. Each child left smiling, their notebooks glowing with new beginnings. Soon, Emma began receiving little notes. "Thank you for helping me speak. Your story made me brave." Each letter felt like a golden jewel in her heart. Emma kept them all in a box, reminders that her voice carried further than she ever dreamed. Emma realized her confidence was no longer just hers. It had rippled outward, touching classmates, younger children, even teachers. She thought of Mrs. Rosewood's letter, "A quiet voice can change the world." And Emma finally believed it, because she could see the change unfolding around her. The town prepared for its annual summer festival, a celebration filled with music, food, and performances. This year, the mayor announced a new tradition, a storytelling stage. Miss Harper smiled knowingly. "Emma, I think this stage was made for you." The idea both thrilled and terrified her, but deep down, she knew she was ready. The festival was unlike anything Emma had faced before. Hundreds of people from across town gathered, their chatter a buzzing sea. The thought of speaking before strangers nearly froze her. But then she looked at Lily, Miss Harper, and her classmates cheering from the front row. She wasn't alone. When her name was called, Emma stepped onto the stage. The golden afternoon sun bathed her in warmth, as if nature itself believed in her. She opened her notebook, took a deep breath, and began. Her words rose above the hum of the crowd, weaving a hush into the festival air. Emma chose to tell her own story, of a shy girl who once feared her voice, and how she discovered courage. As she spoke, she noticed tears, nods, and smiles ripple across the crowd. Her story was no longer just hers. It belonged to everyone who had ever felt small. When Emma finished, silence fell for a heartbeat. Then the crowd erupted in applause, louder than anything she had ever heard. This time, it wasn't just classmates or teachers. It was strangers connected by her words. Emma realized her voice had crossed beyond the school walls into the world. Afterward, a local journalist approached. "Emma, how do you tell stories so beautifully?" Emma hesitated, then smiled. "I just tell them from my heart." The journalist scribbled quickly. Emma laughed shyly. Her words were now news, spreading farther than she ever imagined. That evening, the festival ended with lanterns floating into the sky. Emma released one, whispering, "Thank you, Mrs. Rosewood." Her lantern drifted upward, glowing among hundreds, as if carrying her gratitude to the stars. Her journey felt like one lantern among many, lighting the night sky. Later, Emma wrote a letter to her past self. "Dear shy girl, you were always strong. You just needed to believe in your voice. Look how far you've come." She tucked the letter into her notebook, a reminder that confidence is a journey, not a destination. When school resumed, Emma's classmates surprised her with a banner, "Our Storyteller." They clapped and cheered as she entered. Emma laughed through tears. Confidence, she realized, wasn't about being fearless. It was about letting yourself be celebrated, even when you once thought you didn't deserve it. Emma began mentoring other shy students, just as Mrs. Rosewood and Miss Harper had mentored her. She encouraged them to write, to speak, to believe. "Your voice matters," she told them. And each time, she saw the same spark she once carried flicker into flame. Emma began dreaming bigger. Could she write books? Travel to tell stories in other towns? She didn't know yet, but she believed she could. The once shy girl now saw the horizon not as something to fear, but as a stage waiting for her voice. Emma realized something profound. One voice, no matter how small, could create ripples that touched countless lives. Her courage had inspired her classmates, her school, and now her community. And all it took was the bravery to begin. Miss Harper found Emma one afternoon. "Do you see now, Emma? Confidence was never about being loud. It was about being true. And you, my dear, are the truest voice I've ever heard." Emma hugged her teacher tightly, gratitude flooding her heart. Emma flipped through her notebook one last time that year. Its pages overflowed with golden memories, stories, letters, and dreams. She realized her notebook wasn't just paper. It was the story of her courage. And it would never be full, for new chapters awaited. As Emma walked home under a twilight sky, she smiled. Once, she had feared her voice. Now, it carried dreams beyond her wildest imagination. She whispered to the wind, "This is only the beginning." And the world, bathed in golden twilight, seemed to whisper back, "Yes, it is."